So, let me give you a bit of background information. At the time when this incident happened, I was 16 and had just gotten my driver's license. So, like you'd probably assume, I was your typical dumb teenager. Me and my girlfriend were constantly driving around and just having fun and exploring our small town in Southwest Virginia. To protect her identity, we'll just call her Jane. Now, she was a year younger than me, so I was the one to come pick her up so we could go out. One day, my grandpa told me he was thinking about buying some land over in a place called Tannersville, about a 30-minute drive from where we lived at the time. He said he was thinking about buying 200 acres of land, and he wanted me just to go look at a little of it and see what it looked like. Of course, I asked Jane if she wanted to go, and she said she would. Before I went, though, I asked my grandpa to give me a gun just in case there was something over there, like a wolf, coyote, bear. Since it was a heavily forested area, and the few times I'd been over there, I'd seen almost every one of those animals. After I picked up Jane, we went to go get some food, and then went over to Tannersville. I guess it's worth noting that it's around 5 o'clock, but since it's in the middle of the summer, it won't be getting dark till around 8 or 8:30. When we got to the land, there was an old rusted gate with an old chain on it. I didn't want to bother trying to unhook the chain, so we just climbed over the gate and began to walk up a hill into a small clearing. On that clearing was an old house that looked like it was from the early 1900s. It hadn't been lived in years. It looked like it was about ready to fall over. To be honest, I'm surprised it hasn't already. Now, Jane was a little more adventurous than I was, so of course she wanted to go look inside. I was a little worried at first, but then decided to go look inside. Plus, I didn't want to seem like a puss in front of my girlfriend. I mean, how bad could it be, right? The front door to the house looked like something had broken it, because the bottom half was barely even hanging on. Jane took a picture of it, and I'll show it on screen now. We went inside. We weren't exactly shocked at what we saw, but we were a little confused. The room we walked into, I think, used to be the kitchen, because it had some counters that were half rotted, and the cabinets had pretty much been off on the floor. On the floor, there was a bunch of old newspapers that looked like they had been put into a shredder and ripped apart. Odd, but nothing too unusual. The next room we went into was definitely strange. I think it was the living room, but I'm not entirely sure. It was like the kitchen, with newspapers everywhere, but on the walls, there's some strange symbols on them. I asked Jane if she knew what they were, but she just shrugged her shoulder and said she didn't know either. She didn't look right. Like she was spaced out. Never seen her like that. But I asked her if she's fine, and she said she was, so I just put it off as my own imagination. There were stairs going up to an upstairs. I walked up them, and there was 2 rooms. One to the left, and one to the right. On the left, there was a bedroom that was surprisingly clean considering how the rest of the house looked, while the other room was terrifying, to say the least. I walked in there, I felt strange, like I was being watched, or something was behind me. To be honest, I kind of feel that way now telling the story. Walls of the room were dark red, which might have been bright before the house fell into disrepair, but now reminded me of dried blood. On the floor, there was a circle with strange symbols on the outside, like downstairs in the living room. There were also plants, looked like ferns, and what looked like animal bones. At least I hope they were animals. Now, I'd seen enough ghost shows and stuff like that to know what the general purpose of this was. It was a summoning circle for something that I didn't want to know to find out because I believe in that stuff. Now, you can say what you want, but that's just my opinion. Now, I didn't waste time getting out of there because I didn't want to be hurt by what was in there. I was walking down the stairs and I felt a shove on my back, and I fell down the last 8 or 9. I landed flat on my stomach and slowly turned around, where on the top of the stairs I saw a black figure. I don't mean covered in shadow, I mean just black, like no features, clothes, hair, skin. It was just pure smoke, basically. I didn't waste time getting up to run. As I did, I pulled out my gun and fired 2 shots at the figure, thinking that, oh, maybe it'll kill him, or at least stop him and slow him down. Now, they did hit him, but once in the stomach, and then in the chest. He wasn't phased. Jane was waiting for me back in the kitchen. As I ran out, I grabbed her arm and bolted outside. When we were about 30 feet away, we stopped running. Jane seemed better than I thought, but looked a little confused because she didn't know why I'd ran out. I told her what happened and asked her if she had not heard me shoot. She said she didn't. She was 20 feet away and she did not hear me shoot. And she turned and looked at the house. She grabbed my shoulder and turned to where I could, and she turned me to where I could see it. Through the window in the red room, we both saw a figure. It was the same thing I saw. When she saw this, Jane looked terrified and now grabbed me as we ran to the car. We jumped back across the gate, started the engine, and stepped on the gas. As we were heading back home, Jane asked me what the thing was, but I had no clue. We were silent most of the way home, and I grabbed her, dropped her off at her house, and then I went home too. Next day I went to see Jane. That day, we both said we wouldn't tell anyone what we had saw. I agreed, and until we sat down and typed this out 2 years later, we've broken up since then. We just didn't work out, basically. But neither one of us have been back to that house, even though my grandpa still bought the land. I plan on burning it down. If anyone knows what that thing is, please tell us. What is that thing?